The laughable Armada. The first sign of the alien fleet came on a quiet Tuesday morning when the Deep Space Radar Station in Atacama, Chile, detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. At first, the technicians dismissed it as a glitch, a random spike in the data, or perhaps a forgotten piece of space junk drifting back into range. But as the hours ticked by, the anomaly grew stronger, more defined, until it was impossible to ignore. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead astrophysicist at the facility, stared at the readouts with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "This can't be right," she muttered, running a hand through her graying hair. "George, are you seeing this?" Her assistant, a young prodigy fresh out of MIT, nodded slowly. "I've triple-checked the calculations, Dr. Rodriguez. It's not a glitch. Whatever this is, it's big, and it's headed straight for us." Within hours, observatories around the world confirmed the Chilean team's findings. Something massive was approaching Earth at an impossible speed, decelerating as it neared the inner solar system. The news spread like wildfire, from scientific circles to government agencies, and finally to the public. Panic gripped the globe. Religious zealots proclaimed the end times, while conspiracy theorists had a field day. Governments scrambled to respond, and the United Nations convened an emergency session to address the looming threat. It was in this climate of fear and uncertainty that Dr. Aria Chen, a brilliant xenolinguist and diplomat, found herself summoned to a top-secret briefing at the Pentagon. As she entered the windowless room, she was struck by the tense atmosphere. Military brass sat shoulder to shoulder with civilian scientists, their faces grim in the harsh fluorescent light. General Harrison, a grizzled veteran with more stars on his collar than Chen cared to count, stood at the head of the table. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice gruff, "I'll cut to the chase. 18 hours ago, we made visual contact with the approaching fleet." The room held its breath as he activated a holographic display in the center of the table. A grainy image flickered to life, showing a cluster of oddly shaped objects against the backdrop of space. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, someone laughed. All eyes turned to Dr. Marcus Blackwood, a renowned aerospace engineer known for his cutting-edge designs. "I'm sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But are we sure this isn't some kind of joke?" Chen leaned forward, studying the image. She had to admit, Blackwood had a point. The alien ships, if they could be called that, looked like something out of a low-budget sci-fi film from the 1950s. They were a hodgepodge of shapes, spheres, cylinders, and what appeared to be flying saucers, all cobbled together in a way that defied logic and aerodynamics. "I assure you, Dr. Blackwood, this is no joke," General Harrison growled. "Whatever these things are, they're real, and they're less than 24 hours from entering Earth orbit." "With all due respect, General," Blackwood pressed, "I've designed spacecraft for NASA and SpaceX. These contraptions look like they'd fall apart in a stiff breeze, let alone survive interstellar travel." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Chen watched as the initial tension began to give way to something else, a mixture of relief and amusement. "Maybe they're not so advanced after all," someone whispered. "Looks like we were worried about space invaders, but we got space junk instead," another joked. Even General Harrison's stern expression softened slightly. "Be that as it may," he said, "we need to prepare for first contact. Dr. Chen, that's where you come in." Chen straightened in her seat, her mind racing. This was the moment she'd been preparing for her entire career, the chance to communicate with an alien species. But as she looked at the ramshackle fleet on display, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. "Of course, General," she said, masking her emotions. "I'll need all the data we have on their approach vector, any attempts at communication they've made, and—" "That's just it," Harrison interrupted. "They haven't made any attempts to communicate. No radio signals, no light pulses, nothing. They're just coming." The room fell silent again, but this time, It was a silence tinged with confusion rather than fear. "So let me get this straight," Blackwood said, leaning back in his chair. "We've got a fleet of ships that look like they were cobbled together from spare parts, approaching Earth at speeds that should be impossible for vessels of that quality, and they haven't bothered to say hello." Put that way, the situation did sound absurd. Chen found herself fighting back a smile. "Perhaps," she suggested, "we should make the first move. Send out a greeting, establish contact before they reach orbit." Harrison nodded. "That's the plan. We've prepared a message to be broadcast on all frequencies. Standard we come in peace stuff. But we need you, Dr. Chen, to be ready to interpret any response we might get." As the meeting continued, Chen's mind wandered. She'd spent years studying theoretical alien languages, preparing for this moment. But now, faced with the reality of these seemingly primitive visitors, she began to formulate a different strategy. If these aliens were as unsophisticated as their ships suggested, perhaps a more creative approach was needed, one that could give Earth an advantage in the coming negotiations. As the briefing wound down, Chen approached General Harrison. "Sir," she said, her voice low, "I'd like to volunteer to be part of the first contact team." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "It's going to be dangerous, Dr. Chen. We don't know what we're dealing with." Chen smiled, a glint of ambition in her eyes. "With all due respect, General, I think we have a pretty good idea. And I believe I can handle these visitors." The general studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Dr. Chen. You'll lead the diplomatic mission. But remember, appearances can be deceiving. Don't underestimate them." As Chen left the Pentagon, stepping into the warm Washington evening, she couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was her chance not just to make history, but to shape it, to outsmart these aliens and secure humanity's place in the cosmos. Little did she know, as she gazed up at the stars now hidden by light pollution, that those same aliens were watching. And they were laughing too, not at their own ships, but at the hubris of the humans who thought they had it all figured out. In the vastness of space, the alien fleet continued its approach, their ramshackle appearance hiding technologies beyond human comprehension. Within their ships, beings of unimaginable intelligence prepared for the encounter, amused by the primitive broadcasts they were receiving from Earth. As night fell across the planet, humanity slept fitfully, their dreams filled with images of clunky flying saucers and little green men. But in just a few short hours, they would wake to a reality far stranger and far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the greatest misconception in human history was about to be revealed. Pride before the fall. The sun rose over a world holding its breath. In every major city, crowds gathered in front of massive screens, waiting for the first glimpse of the alien ships entering Earth's orbit. News anchors struggled to maintain their composure as they narrated humanity's first extraterrestrial encounter. Dr. Aria Chen stood on the launch pad, her heart racing beneath the bulky spacesuit. Behind her, a gleaming shuttle waited to carry her and her team to the International Space Station, now repurposed as humanity's greeting point for the alien visitors. "Dr. Chen," a voice called. She turned to see Dr. Marcus Blackwood jogging towards her, his own spacesuit making him look like an overgrown child's toy. "I've got the latest scans of the alien fleet," he said, slightly out of breath. "You're going to want to see this." Chen took the offered tablet, her eyes widening as she swiped through the images. The alien ships, now clearly visible, looked even more ridiculous up close. What had seemed like sleek cylinders from a distance were revealed to be pockmarked with craters and held together with what looked suspiciously like duct tape. "Are you sure these are right?" she asked, unable to keep the amusement from her voice. Blackwood nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Confirmed by 3 separate satellites. It looks like our advanced alien visitors are flying around in space junkers." Chen couldn't help but laugh. All the fear, all the preparation, and this was what they were dealing with. Part of her felt almost insulted. She'd spent years preparing for this moment, honing her skills, ready to face an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Instead, she was about to negotiate with the galactic equivalent of a traveling carnival. "Well," she said, handing the tablet back to Blackwood, "I suppose this makes our job easier. Are you ready to make history, Doctor?" Blackwood's grin widened. "Lead the way, Dr. Chen. Let's go welcome our new space friends." As the shuttle rocketed towards the space station, Chen reviewed her strategy. Initially, she planned a cautious approach, careful not to offend or provoke the aliens. Now, seeing the state of their fleet, she decided on a bolder tactic. These beings had crossed the vastness of space in ships that looked like they'd barely survive a trip to the corner store. Clearly, they were desperate. Earth, with its advanced technology and vast resources, held all the cards. The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon Chen and her team were floating through the space station's corridors. They made their way to the newly constructed reception area, a large, circular room with a massive view screen dominating one wall. General Harrison's voice crackled over the comm system. "Dr. Chen, the alien flagship is approaching. Are you ready?" Chen straightened her suit, a surge of confidence flowing through her. "More than ready, General. Let's show these visitors what humanity is made of." The view screen flickered to life, showing a massive disc-shaped ship approaching the station. Its surface was a patchwork of different metals, with strange protrusions jutting out at odd angles. As it drew closer, Chen could swear she saw actual rust spots on its hull. "This is Dr. Area Chen of Earth," she broadcast, her voice clear and commanding. "On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. We are eager to establish peaceful communication and cultural exchange." For a long moment, there was silence. Chen glanced at Blackwood, who shrugged. Then, with a crackle of static, a voice responded. "Greetings, Dr. Area Chen of Earth. I am Caesar, commander of the Galactic Exploration Fleet. We come in peace and look forward to learning about your world." The voice was oddly melodious, with a lilting accent that Chen couldn't quite place. But what struck her most was how ordinary it sounded. No otherworldly tones, no incomprehensible harmonics. Just a voice, almost human-like in its inflection. Emboldened, Chen pressed on. "We're honored by your visit, Commander Caesar. If I may ask, what brings you to our humble corner of the galaxy?" There was a pause, and Chen imagined the alien commander considering his words carefully. "We are explorers, Dr. Chen. We seek out new civilizations, new technologies. Your world has piqued our interest." Chen smiled, sensing an opportunity. "Well, Commander, you've certainly come to the right place. Earth is a hub of innovation and technological advancement. Perhaps during your stay, we could arrange an exchange of knowledge. I'm sure we have much to offer each other." As she spoke, Chen's mind raced with possibilities. If these aliens, with their dilapidated ships, had managed interstellar travel, imagine what they could do with Earth's technology. And in return, humanity would gain the secret of faster-than-light travel. It was a win-win situation. Caesar's response was tinged with what sounded like amusement. "An exchange of knowledge. Yes, I believe that can be arranged. In fact, why don't we begin now?" Before Chen could respond, the view screen erupted in a blinding flash of light. She stumbled back, shielding her eyes. When she looked again, her jaw dropped. The rusty, patchwork ship was gone. In its place hovered a vessel of breathtaking beauty and complexity. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent sheen, seamlessly shifting and reforming as if alive. Intricate patterns of light danced across its hull, forming and dissolving in mesmerizing sequences. What is this?" Chen stammered, all pretense of control evaporating. Caesar's voice, when it came again, had lost all trace of its earlier friendliness. "This, Dr. Chen, is the true face of the Galactic Exploration Fleet. The ships you mocked, the technology you derided, it was all a test you have failed spectacularly." As Caesar spoke, more ships appeared, each more fantastic than the last. They moved with impossible grace, defying the laws of physics as Chen understood them. You see, Dr. Chen, Caesar continued, his voice now resonating with power, we have visited many worlds, encountered many species, and we have learned that those who judge based on appearances, who seek to exploit rather than understand, are not ready for the gifts we bring. Chen's mind reeled. She tried to speak, to salvage the situation, but no words came. Behind her, she heard Blackwood whisper a string of colorful expletives. We had hoped, Caesar said, his disappointment palpable, that humanity would prove different, that you would look beyond our facade and seek true understanding. Instead, you saw what you believed to be weakness and sought to exploit it. You have revealed much about your species, Dr. Chen, none of it flattering. As if to punctuate Caesar's words, the alien ships began to move. They spread out, forming a web around Earth that Chen knew, with sickening certainty, was impenetrable. Now, Caesar said, you will witness the true power of those you mocked. Let this be a lesson to humanity. The view screen exploded in a cacophony of light and sound. Chen watched in horror as Earth's satellites, space stations, and orbital defenses were systematically neutralized. Each blast was precisely calculated, causing no loss of life, but demonstrating power beyond anything humanity could hope to counter. In less than 5 minutes, Earth was defenseless. As alarms blared and panic erupted around her, Chen stood frozen, the magnitude of her miscalculation crushing down on her. She had come to this meeting full of pride and ambition, certain of humanity's superiority. Now, as she stared at the alien armada that held the fate of her world in its hands, she realized the terrible truth. Humanity's pride had led to its fall, and the price of that fall was yet to be determined. In the silence that followed the demonstration of alien power, Chen's comm unit crackled to life. General Harrison's voice, usually so confident, now trembled slightly. Dr. Chen, he said, the President is asking, what do we do now? Chen looked out at the vast, shimmering fleet that surrounded her home planet. For the first time in her life, she had no answer. Desperate measures. The next 72 hours were the longest of Dr. Area Chen's life. After the alien show of force, Earth had descended into chaos. Riots broke out in major cities, stock markets crashed, and governments teetered on the brink of collapse. The alien commander, Caesar, had issued an ultimatum. Earth had 3 days to surrender unconditionally or face the consequences. Chen sat in a dimly lit conference room deep within a military bunker, her head in her hands. Around her, world leaders argued via holographic projections, their voices a cacophony of fear and desperation. We have to surrender, the French president insisted. You've seen what they can do. We don't stand a chance. Surrender, the Russian president scoffed, and become slaves to these cosmic overlords. Never. As the debate raged on, Chen tuned them out. Her mind kept replaying her conversation with Caesar, searching for something, anything she might have missed. A clue, a weakness, a chance. A hand on her shoulder startled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Dr. Marcus Blackwood, his usual smirk replaced by a grim determination. Dr. Chen, he said softly, I think I found something, but we need to talk privately. Intrigued, Chen followed Blackwood out of the conference room. He led her through a maze of corridors until they reached a small, cluttered laboratory. Inside, hunched over a computer, was a teenager with wild, unkempt hair and fingers flying across a keyboard. Dr. Chen, meet Zara, Blackwood said. She's a bit of a prodigy when it comes to, well, anything involving computers. Zara looked up, her eyes bright with excitement despite the dark circles beneath them. Dr. Chen, it's an honor. I've been analyzing the alien transmissions and I think I've found a pattern. Chen leaned in, hope flickering in her chest for the first time in days. What kind of pattern? Zara pulled up a series of complex diagrams on her screen. It's subtle, but there's an underlying structure to their communications that seems familiar, almost like it's based on some kind of Earth language, but incredibly ancient. Blackwood nodded. That's where our other team member comes in. Dr. Chen, I'd like you to meet Professor Eduardo Vasquez. From the shadows of the lab emerged an older man, his silver hair wild and his tweed jacket rumpled. He carried a stack of old books and papers, which he unceremoniously dumped on a nearby table. Dr. Chen, he said, his voice carrying a hint of a Spanish accent, I've spent my life studying ancient languages and symbols. When Dr. Blackwood showed me Zora's findings, I couldn't believe my eyes. He spread out several papers, each covered in strange symbols and diagrams. These, he said, pointing to a series of intricate designs, were found in caves and on artifacts dating back tens of thousands of years. We've never been able to decipher them fully. But look at this. He pulled up one of Zora's diagrams, placing it side by side with an ancient cave painting. The similarities were undeniable. Chen's mind raced. Are you saying these aliens have been here before? Vasquez nodded excitedly. Not just been here. I think they might have had a significant influence on early human development. These symbols, these patterns, they're not just similar to our ancient writings. They're the source of them. The implications were staggering. Chen looked at the mismatched team before her, a disgraced diplomat, a sarcastic aerospace engineer, a teenage hacker, and an eccentric archaeologist. It wasn't exactly the group she would have chosen to save the world. But right now, they were humanity's best hope. Okay, she said, her voice finding its strength again. What do we do with this information? Zara spoke up, her fingers never stopping their dance across the keyboard. I've been working on a program to interface with the alien systems. If Professor Vasquez is right, and their language is the basis for these ancient Earth symbols, we might be able to create a backdoor into their network. Blackwood chimed in. And if we can do that, we might find a weakness, something we can exploit. Chen nodded slowly, her mind already formulating a plan. We need more. Professor Vasquez, what else can you tell us about these ancient symbols? Any clues about their meaning, their purpose? Vasquez rifled through his papers, pulling out a faded photograph. This artifact was found in a remote temple in Peru. It's always puzzled us because it seems to depict a sort of key, not a physical key, but a sequence of symbols that, according to the inscription, could unlock the stars. Chen's eyes widened. A key to unlock the stars. Could it be some kind of access code? Zara's typing intensified. If it is, I might be able to use it to boost my program's effectiveness. But we'd need to get close to one of their ships to transmit it. The room fell silent as the enormity of the task sank in. They had a potential plan, but it was dangerous, possibly suicidal. And they had less than 48 hours to pull it off. Chen took a deep breath. All right, here's what we're going to do. Zara, keep working on that program. Professor Vasquez, I need you to dig deeper into those symbols. Find us anything that could help. Dr. Blackwood, you and I are going to figure out how to get us on one of those alien ships. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Chen felt a glimmer of hope. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The next 36 hours were a blur of activity. Zara worked tirelessly on her program, fueled by energy drinks and determination. Professor Vasquez pored over ancient texts, muttering to himself in a mix of languages. Blackwood and Chen argued over schematics and contingency plans, trying to find a way to infiltrate the alien fleet. With just 12 hours left before the ultimatum expired, they reconvened in the lab. Everyone looked exhausted, but there was a spark of excitement in the air. I've got it, Zara announced, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. The program's ready. If we can get within range of one of their ships, I think we can break in. Vasquez spread out a series of diagrams, and I believe I've deciphered the key sequence. It's not just symbols. It's tied to specific astronomical alignments. We'll need to input the sequence at precisely the right moment for it to work. Blackwood stepped forward, holding up a small device. This is our ticket in. It's a prototype stealth shuttle, barely big enough for 2 people. If we time it right, we might be able to slip past their defenses. Chen looked at the team, a mix of pride and fear churning in her stomach. This is it, then. Our last, desperate chance to save Earth. As they made their final preparations, Chen couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. Days ago, she had been so certain of humanity's superiority. Now, their only hope lay in ancient symbols left behind by the very beings they had mocked. With just hours left before Caesar's deadline, Chen and Blackwood boarded the stealth shuttle. As the hangar doors opened, revealing the star-studded sky and the looming alien fleet beyond, Chen sent a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening. Humanity had been brought low by its pride. Now it was time to see if they could rise again through desperation, ingenuity, and the wisdom of the past. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying with it the hopes of an entire planet, Chen whispered, "Let's show them what humanity is really made of." The mission was on. The clock was ticking, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Operation Trojan Horse. The stealth shuttle sliced through the inky blackness of space, its experimental cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible against the starry backdrop. Inside, Dr. Aria Chen and Dr. Marcus Blackwood sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the looming form of the alien mothership. Approaching optimal insertion point, Blackwood muttered, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Ready for this, Chen?" Chen nodded, her throat too dry for words. In her lap sat a tablet connected to Zora's hacking program and a small device containing Professor Vasquez's decoded symbols. Everything hinged on these 2 pieces of technology and on their ability to infiltrate the alien vessel undetected. As they drew closer, the true scale of the alien ship became apparent. It was vast beyond imagining, its iridescent surface rippling with patterns of light that seemed to defy physics. "There," Blackwood whispered, pointing to a small irregularity in the ship's hull. "Looks like some kind of maintenance hatch. It's our best shot." Chen took a deep breath. "Take us in." With expert precision, Blackwood maneuvered the shuttle towards the hatch. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as if they would crash into the alien hull. Then, with a soft thud and a hiss of equalizing pressure, they were through. They found themselves in a cavernous bay, filled with strange, undulating structures that might have been alien machinery. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy that made Chen's skin tingle. "Atmosphere's breathable," Blackwood announced, checking a sensor. "But I wouldn't recommend staying too long. No telling what kind of weird alien stuff we're breathing in." They exited the shuttle, moving cautiously through the alien environment. Chen activated Zora's program, and holographic displays sprang to life around her wrist, attempting to map and analyze their surroundings. "This way," she whispered, pointing down a corridor that pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light. The program's detecting a concentration of data streams in that direction. Must be some kind of control center. As they crept through the ship, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The walls seemed to shift and breathe, and more than once she could have sworn she saw eyes blinking at her from within the strange, organic-looking structures. Suddenly, Blackwood grabbed her arm, pulling her into a recess in the wall. A moment later, 2 alien figures glided past. They were tall, ethereal beings, their bodies seeming to shimmer in and out of physical existence. "Did you see that?" Blackwood hissed once they had passed. They looked almost human, but not quite. Chen nodded, her mind racing. The alien's form was eerily familiar, like a distorted reflection of humanity. It lent credence to Vasquez's theory about their ancient connection to Earth. They pressed on, narrowly avoiding several more alien patrols. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the ship's central hub. Holographic displays filled the air, showing images of Earth from various angles. "This is it," Chen said, her voice barely audible. Cover me." As Blackwood kept watch, Chen approached a console that pulsed with energy. She placed her tablet on its surface, and Zora's program sprang into action, streams of alien code filling the air around them. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, they were in. The alien systems lay bare before them. "It worked," Chen exclaimed, her eyes wide, as she took in the wealth of information suddenly available to them. "Quick, download everything you can. We need to." Her words were cut short by a blaring alarm. The lights in the room turned a deep, pulsing red, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. "They've detected us," Blackwood growled, drawing a small energy weapon. "We need to move. Now." But as they turned to flee, they found their path blocked. Commander Caesar stood before them, flanked by a contingent of alien guards. His form was more solid than the others they had seen, radiating an aura of ancient power. "Dr. Chen," Caesar said, his voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "I must admit, I'm impressed. Few species have ever managed to penetrate our defenses so creatively." Chen straightened, forcing herself to meet Caesar's gaze. "We had help," she said, holding up the device with Vasquez's symbols. "From you, as it turns out. Or at least, from your ancestors." Caesar's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his ethereal features. "Impossible," he murmured, reaching for the device. In that moment of distraction, Blackwood made his move. He fired his weapon, not at Caesar, but at the ceiling above them. A shower of sparks and debris rained down, momentarily disorienting the aliens. "Run," Blackwood shouted, grabbing Chen's arm and pulling her towards an open corridor. They sprinted through the twisting passages of the alien ship, alarms blaring around them. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuit, growing ever closer. "We're not going to make it back to the shuttle," Chen panted as they rounded another corner. Blackwood skidded to a halt, his eyes fixed on something ahead of them. "Maybe we don't have to," he said. Chen followed his gaze and gasped. Before them stood a row of sleek, pod-like structures. They hummed with energy, their surfaces rippling like the skin of the ship itself. "Escape pods?" Chen asked, hope rising in her chest. Blackwood grinned. "Let's find out." They raced towards the nearest pod, even as the sounds of their pursuers grew louder. As they approached, the pod's surface parted like water, revealing the dimly lit interior. "Ladies first," Blackwood said, giving Chen a push towards the opening. She clambered in, Blackwood right behind her. The pod sealed itself just as Kaiser and his guards rounded the corner. "How do we operate this thing?" Chen asked, looking around frantically for some kind of control panel. Blackwood held up his hands helplessly. "I have no idea. Maybe we can." His words were cut off as the pod suddenly lurched into motion. They were pressed back against its walls as it shot forward, bursting out of the alien ship and into open space. Through the pod's translucent shell, they could see Earth growing larger by the second. They were heading home, but they were coming in hot. "Brace for impact," Blackwood yelled as the pod entered Earth's atmosphere, flames licking at its exterior. Chen clutched her tablet and the simple device to her chest, praying that the data they had stolen would survive the landing. As the ground rushed up to meet them, she closed her eyes and thought of Zara, Vasquez, and all the others counting on them back on Earth. With a bone-jarring crash, the pod slammed into the ground. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, slowly, the pod's shell began to dissolve, revealing a landscape of twisted metal and smoking debris. Chen groaned, pushing herself up on shaky arms. Beside her, Blackwood stirred, a trickle of blood running down his forehead. "Did we make it?" he mumbled, his eyes struggling to focus. Before Chen could answer, the air was split by the sound of approaching helicopters. Flashlights pierced the gloom, and voices called out in a mix of languages. "We made it," Chen said, a smile breaking across her face despite the pain. "And we brought back one hell of a souvenir." As emergency responders swarmed the crash site, Chen clutched the stolen alien data close. They had done it. Against all odds, they had infiltrated the alien ship and escaped with invaluable information. But as she looked up at the sky, where the alien fleet still loomed ominously, she knew their ordeal was far from over. They had won a battle, but the war for Earth's survival was just beginning. And somewhere above them, Commander Xizor was undoubtedly preparing his response. The next move in this cosmic chess game would determine the fate of humanity, and thanks to their daring heist, Earth finally had a fighting chance. Humanity's trump card. The underground bunker hummed with frantic energy as scientists and military personnel swarmed around Dr. Arya Chen and Dr. Marcus Blackwood. Despite their injuries from the crash landing, the two refused medical attention, insisting on immediately analyzing the data they'd stolen from the alien ship. Zara's fingers flew across her keyboard, her eyes wide as she sifted through the alien code. "This is incredible," she breathed. "Their technology, their history, it's all here. But there's something else, something hidden beneath layers of encryption." Professor Vasquez leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These patterns, they're similar to the ancient symbols we found, but they're more complex, more alive." As they worked, General Harrison approached, his face grim. "We're running out of time," he said. "The alien fleet is mobilizing. Whatever you found, we need to use it now." Chen nodded, her mind racing. "There's a connection here, something we're missing. The aliens, the ancient symbols, their technology. It's all intertwined somehow." Suddenly, Zara gasped. "I've got it. Look at this." The group huddled around her screen, watching in awe as a holographic display materialized above it. It showed a double helix, but unlike any DNA they'd ever seen. Strands of energy intertwined with the familiar biological structure, pulsing with an otherworldly light. "Is that alien DNA?" Blackwood asked, his voice hushed. Vasquez shook his head, his eyes wide with realization. "Not alien. Human. Or at least, what human DNA could become." Chen's mind raced, putting the pieces together. "They're not invaders," she whispered. "They're us, a future version of humanity, evolved beyond our current form." The revelation hit the room like a shockwave. The aliens they'd been fighting weren't extraterrestrial beings, but their own descendants, returned from a distant future. "But why?" General Harrison demanded. "Why come back and threaten their own ancestors?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the bunker. On the main screen, they watched as the alien, no, future human, fleet descended towards Earth. "We're out of time," Harrison growled. "We need a plan. Now." Chen's eyes locked onto the device containing the ancient symbols, the key that had allowed them to infiltrate the alien ship. "We have a plan," she said, her voice steady. "We're going to talk to them." Despite protests from the military personnel, Chen's team quickly set up a makeshift broadcasting station. As the future human ships entered the atmosphere, Chen took a deep breath and activated the communication array. "This is Dr. Arya Chen of Earth," she broadcast, her voice echoing across every frequency. "Commander Xizor, we know who you are. We know what you are, and we need to talk." For a long, tense moment, there was no response. Then, with a crackle of energy, Caesar's form materialized in the center of the room. "You've surprised us once again, Dr. Chen," Caesar said, his voice resonating in their minds. "Few have ever uncovered the truth of our nature." Chen stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Why have you come back? Why threaten your own past?" Hadzel's form shimmered, his expression a mixture of sadness and determination. "Because humanity's path leads to ruin. In our time, we have achieved wonders beyond your imagination, evolved beyond the constraints of physical form. But in doing so, we lost something essential, our connection to our roots, to the very planet that birthed us." He gestured, and the air filled with holographic images of a desolate Earth, stripped of life and resources. This is the future we come from, a future where humanity's unchecked progress and ambition led to the destruction of our homeworld. We came back not to conquer, but to prevent this future from coming to pass. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their descendants had returned not as conquerors, but as desperate saviors, willing to reshape history to prevent a catastrophic future. But Chen wasn't satisfied. There had to be another way, she insisted. Why not simply warn us? Why the deception, the threats? Hizor's form flickered, a hint of shame crossing his features. We have tried, countless times across countless timelines. Simple warnings were never enough. Humanity's potential for both creation and destruction is immense. We needed to shock you, to push you to the brink, to make you realize the full weight of your choices. As Kaiser spoke, Zara suddenly straightened, her eyes wide. "The key," she exclaimed. "The ancient symbols, the strange DNA, it's all connected. It's a failsafe, isn't it? A way to bridge the gap between what we are and what we become." Shizor nodded slowly. "Clever child. Yes, the key is both lock and bridge. A means to access our technology, but also a roadmap for human evolution. A way to guide your development without losing the essence of what makes you human." Chen's mind raced with possibilities. "So if we use this key, we can change our future. Prevent the destruction you've shown us." "It is a chance," Shizor said. "A chance to forge a new path, one that balances progress with preservation. But the choice must be yours. We cannot force this upon you." The room erupted in debate. Some argued for accepting the future human's guidance, while others were wary of any outside influence on human development. The fate of not just their world, but their entire species across time hung in the balance. As the arguments raged, Chen found herself at the eye of the storm. She looked at the stolen data, at the key with its ancient symbols, and at the image of the ravaged future Earth. In that moment, she understood the true weight of the choice before them. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. All eyes turned to her as she stepped towards Kaiser. "You came back to change the future, but in doing so, you've already changed the present. We may be your ancestors, but we're not the same humanity that led to your timeline." She held up the key, its symbols glowing faintly. "We'll use this knowledge, this roadmap you've given us, not to become you, but to forge our own path. A path that learns from the mistakes of the future without being bound by them." Kixizor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he said, "this is the variable we could never account for. The human capacity to surprise, to defy expectations. Very well, Dr. Chen. The future is in your hands." With a gesture, Caesar's form began to fade. Around the world, the future human fleet shimmered and disappeared, returning to a timeline that might now never come to pass. As the room erupted in a mixture of cheers and stunned silence, Chen felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. They had faced the ultimate test, a judgment from their own future, and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. Humanity had been given a second chance, an opportunity to rewrite their destiny. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult choices and hard-won progress. But they would face it armed with knowledge of both their potential and their pitfalls. As the first light of a new dawn broke over the horizon, Chen looked out at a world forever changed. The future was unwritten, full of both promise and peril. But for the first time, humanity held the pen. They had faced their future, and in doing so, reclaimed their present. The greatest adventure in human history was just beginning.